Hello, networking nutritionists. There's a few of you in here already. Thank you for being so prompt. You all know me already. I'm Veronica Jean, and today I'm here with Simon Brazier. We're all really excited for this conversation, so I'll try to keep it reeled in, but I'm selfishly very excited to hear what you have to share with us today, Simon. Specifically, Simon's going to be sharing his journey into holistic nutrition. So we'll get to learn a little bit about him, his areas of brilliance, the kind of niches that he's working in right now, and then most importantly, maybe why I think everyone is coming here is to learn about how to extend your opportunities in the digital world with podcasting specifically. So for those of you who are watching live or perhaps going to be catching the replay, if you've been contemplating starting up a podcast but are feeling sort of overwhelmed about that prospect, then this is definitely the hour for you. For everyone who is here live, Simon is offering a giveaway as well, so definitely watch to the end to get those details as well. So welcome, Simon. Thank you for being here. And I'll give you the floor. Did you want to maybe tell us just a little bit about yourself right off the bat?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm very excited to talk about primarily podcasting. I don't think most people like talking about themselves too much, but I think most people, when it comes to holistic nutrition or holistic health, have usually got an interesting dive into that industry. So I'm pumped to share some of the things I've learned and some of my experiences. And yeah, thank you very much for allowing me to do that today.
Yeah. So what was in your, where to start, in your bio, I guess, that you provided for us for this event? You mentioned a documentary that was sort of the trigger for you that got you into holistic health in general. Can you tell us what that documentary was and why it piqued your interest so much at the time?
Totally. So I grew up in the UK, had a very typical kind of like bad diet. I mean, looking back at it retrospectively now, certainly like not healthy in regards to what I know now. And when I got into my adulthood, you kind of get this extra freedom, so you can eat what you want, you can drink what you want, you can kind of do what you want. And like in England, that just wasn't not really it wasn't a healthy environment for me. And then I got to about 22, 23, and I wanted to do something really different with my life. So I moved to Sweden. I started teaching. I was a preschool teacher over there for like 4 or 5 years. And then a couple of things happened to me. And one of them was watching this documentary, Forks Over Knives. I'm sure most people are familiar with it. It's like a huge brand now. I've not watched it in years, but I should probably revisit it. But now they've got a whole host of things associated with it now. But anyway, this documentary just completely busted open all the belief systems I had around health, around nutrition, around food. And that was kind of the first time that those core beliefs around things that I thought that I knew so much about, and I just thought that they were a given, that you just like eat food, you just eat what you want, you eat what's available. You don't really think about the processed foods, the refined foods, what they may be doing to your body, how unbelievably foreign they are, how your body just cannot actually deal with them, especially in like large amounts. And for myself, looking back in my like early 20s, I was definitely drank too much alcohol. I was probably just eating what I wanted to do, and because of what I was drinking and eating, I was just always going towards like sugars and carbs and things like that. So I never really knew about fats. And in the UK especially, you're just taught that fat is absolutely terribly bad for you and you shouldn't consume any of it. And even my parents, even though I'm a kind of an expert on nutrition now, my parents still kind of find it hard to believe that they should maybe be going towards the 5 to 9% flavor-free yogurt rather than the 0% kind of sugary crap. But that's just kind of the way it was. But yeah, so that documentary really just it just busted open a bunch of belief systems that I never really revisited for probably a decade. And it just opened up my eyes to whole foods, the dangers of processed foods, and how that whole kind of industry works. And you start thinking about the marketing that's been thrown at you from every possible angle, from some of these fast food companies from 4 or 5 years of age. It's quite disturbing and disgusting the way that they start creating customers from such a young age. But yeah, it busted open all of that for me. It was a really powerful documentary.
Mm-hmm. I relate with what you said there. I remember when I was first studying nutrition, coming home and talking with my dad about some of the things I was learning. And I remember him making a joke like, I thought you were studying nutrition. This sounds a lot like political science. It's like, yeah, you know what? Actually, there's just so much for us to know, right? It's such a big, so much marketing and around what we eat. One of the other things you shared in your bio that I know we've talked about a little bit, but I think would be awesome for everyone else to learn about you as well. You've shared about your experience with both of your parents undergoing a live organ transplant and how that was really a turning point for you in your life with nutrition as well. So can you tell us more about how that impacted your journey?
Certainly. So the documentary and this experience kind of coincided in the same 6 months. So it was kind of these two things put together really started to reshape things for me. So in 2014, my dad had been on an organ list for a new liver for a couple of years in the NHS over in the UK. I was living in England at the time, but he drank a lot in his 20s and 30s, and the damage when he was like in his 50s was just irreversible. And if he wanted to get off a lot of medications, he needed a completely new organ. And thinking back now, I wonder if he actually could have changed a lot of things with his actual liver to regenerate, but that wasn't a thought process at that time. Anyway, yeah, he's on the wait list for a couple of years, and the phone call wasn't coming. And my parents were just watching this random health documentary, medical documentary on the TV one night, and they started talking about how in different countries, especially over in Asia, that they do live organ transplants, and they do it with they just like usually look a very long operation. They do lots of tests and everything, and obviously you need to have like the blood match, you need to have close of an organ match to do this. And they basically ridiculously had to bring that idea to their doctors over in the UK. So they presented this idea and had to kind of convince them to do it. And what was remarkable about the whole thing and just purely miraculous was the fact that my mum's got O negative blood, so she was a universal donor, and she was like a 4 out of 5 organ match. So they're like, well, this is unbelievable, but this could happen. So I think my mum went through about 10 months of blood tests, and she had to like really keep her health in check. She didn't drink for 10 months, which for my mum was quite the ordeal, but she did it successfully. And yeah, I remember the whole operation itself. There was a big build up to it because she'd gone through all this preparation. It was kind of like my dad's like real like last chance on like a new organ to really bring his health around. And my brothers and I were it was in Oxford, like in I can never remember the name of the hospital, Addenbrooke's Hospital in the UK. It's one of the most famous in Europe. And my parents both got into separate rooms. They took my mum down first to open her up to look at her liver, to get a physical look at it, to see what kind of shape it was in. And once they given the kind of green light for that, they brought my dad down, opened him up, took out his liver, the whole thing, just got rid of that thing, that pickled liver, and then they took 70% of my mum's out of her. So they cut off, like 2/3 of her, like one of her most vital organs out, and they just placed it straight into my dad. I'm sure it was a bit more complicated now. They were in there for 15 hours in total, but these 3 doctors were flown over from India to do the procedure. One was working on my mum, one was working on my dad, and one guy was overseeing it. Like these 3 geniuses at work, and they flew over because it was the first operation of its kind in the UK. It had never been done before, and it's a very common practice over in India and other countries that way. So after the operation had been done, and me and my brothers are just like killing lots of time, go back to the hospital. It's been a complete success, and we go and see my dad, and he looks. This also goes into how I started to change my own health as well, because he looked so unbelievably bad. He looked like he'd been hit by a truck. He looked weak. I'd never seen my father look like that. It was just you shouldn't see anyone that you love in that type of position. But emotional experiences really can hit home and energetically change you. So I take a lot of positives out of that experience. But then we went to go and see my mum. She actually looked a lot better than my dad did, considering. But these 3 doctors were at the foot of her bed, and I'll never forget this. And my 2 brothers were opposite me, and we're talking and discussing about the operation, and then we get into like recovery, like what can my mum do, what can she consume, what can she drink, any supplements or anything that she can take to start regenerating her liver and to start getting back to full health, because by this time we understood that the liver probably would take a year or even 2 years to just completely regenerate, and it would just kind of be good to go. So we wondered, like, how can she do that in the healthiest way possible? Anyway, the primary doctor said that maybe she could have a sandwich or some ice cream later on, was the nutritional advice from this doctor. And I not the only thing I watched or learnt about like nutrition was this documentary, and that just didn't sit with me. That advice just felt wrong to the core. And me and my brother's having conversations about it afterwards. Like, I said, that can't be like right. Surely there's like, we can do some juicing. Surely there's like, just avoiding, junky, crappier foods and getting some like healthier things in there. Like, surely that makes sense, right? And then my brothers and I were walking around this hospital, and my eyes were open for one of the first times in regards to the medical community, health, nutrition. And there was like McDonald's, there was like Wimpy's, there was like junk food kind of like everywhere. And then you look around about the patients there with their like carrying their tubes and all their IVs and stuff around with them, and then they're sat down having like a Big Mac at the same time. So it really, really, like, again, busted some thoughts, beliefs wide open in regards to health, going into a hospital, and like, are they really like trying to get us healthy? Are they trying to make us leave so we don't have to come back again, or is it this revolving door? It just got really confusing. And then I started to read a little bit more. But yeah, that experience with my parents and the Forks Over Knife documentary, like together, like in a 6-month period, like really, really changed my life to the core. And that's what kind of directed me in regards to learning more about nutrition, but more about my own body, because these beliefs have just been so busted up and they're just in pieces on the floor. And I wanted to rebuild that back up, rebuild those belief systems and start learning more about it. But yeah, and it just took me on this energetic journey, and the whole emotional piece when it comes to seeing your parents go through something like that. And I call that, I categorize it as a complete miracle, considering my mum was able to donate. And yeah, it continues to fuel me going forward, and it can only take the beautiful positives from that whole experience, really.
Mhm. Since that point in your journey where you had that kind of awakening moment, then you've pursued all sorts of different education in nutrition over the span of your life now. Is there any specific course or program or moment that's been particularly valuable to you?
Yeah, I mean, so I went back to Sweden after that whole ordeal, and I was like, oh, I've got to learn more. I've got to do this. And I had a full-time job at the time, so I had to do something in my own time, and it was online. And I did like a health coaching course. It was a year long through the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, IIN. Really cool course, really eye opening. Looked into a lot of like diets, and it didn't go deep into the anatomy, the biochemistry, the sciencey stuff that I was really into like in my 30s. I had no interest when I was 15 at school learning about these things, but I was absolutely like addicted to learning how the body worked at like, the cellular level. So I did that course, but yeah, it didn't give me enough. So that's what I moved to. So I moved to Canada from Sweden to go to Pacific Rim College in Victoria, because they had this ridiculously comprehensive 3-year nutrition program, which came with like about 350 hours of clinic time as well. And it was just like, this is unbelievable. I wanted to be immersed in this learning experience so I could talk to the professors, I could talk to my peers, we could, discuss. There's obviously so much value from an online course, but being there, being present, being in it, and being able to answer questions to these experienced professors and practitioners was really important. So apart from that 3-year diploma, which is like the kind of the core foundation of my training, did some really awesome courses just through online, through Coursera. There was advanced neurobiology, I think was from Peking University. That was just very, very, I mean, it's really, really complicated stuff. And I had to go through it many, many times, because it's a very advanced course that's built upon foundations of other courses. But they do make it so you can go back and check into all of these things. They give you really great tools and references. Essentials of Global Health. I think that was Yale University. That was a really cool course. I think I just kind of wanted to also have a course from Yale on my CV. That was kind of a cool thing, and you get access to these incredible professors. And yeah, it was just a very interesting course in regards to looking at health from a global standpoint, because obviously each country is very very different. But what are the trends globally? Um, CBT for depression, anxiety, and addiction through the Beck Institute was amazing, really, really cool. And they make these courses so accessible, and just, you can also, if you, depending on how much you want to participate, really, really interactive with professors, teachers, and the other students. But without question, I did a course called Gut Check, Exploring the Microbiome, University of Colorado. Again, that was on Coursera, but I did that when I was doing my nutrition degree, and I think I was in my second year. And I was really obsessed with the microbiome. It was super hot topic, really, really fascinating. You start talking about germs and bugs, and think a lot of people still think that we're kind of sterile all over the place, when it couldn't, that couldn't be more wrong. So that course was amazing. That was really, really in depth. It was really long, and I've gone back and gone over the information a few times because it's just so good. If I recommend, I think you can do that for free. I think on Coursera, you don't get like the certificate at the end, but you can also, you can pay for it. I think it's probably about $60, but it's well worth it. You're learning from, you're getting the cutting edge science. They update it all the time, and you're learning from like professors that have been studying this type of thing for decades, and it's just truly fascinating stuff. Yeah, so I think that gut check microbiome course was probably the cherry on the cake in regards to my obsession with the microbiome.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have such a varied experience there. You've obviously done the nutrition training, you have this neurobiology, the microbiome, and you had a life before nutrition as well, where you gained education there. So, with your varied experience and from the perspective of a digital marketer, do you have any tips that you would share with someone who hasn't maybe found their niche yet? How you think that nutritionists can nail down what their areas of brilliance are. And second to that, I guess why you think it's important to have a niche if you do think that's important.
Yeah, certainly. I can take that second part of that question first.
Sure.
I think it's very important to niche up from a business perspective. There are people who obviously can certainly support people on a very broad scale. For example, I went to a TCM acupuncturist today, and I'm sure she deals with so many different things, but acupuncture is kind of her niche, right? But when it comes to, like, say, a nutritionist like myself, I found it very important that I needed to niche up in regards to establishing kind of a loyal customer base, having that baseline of clients that like keep coming back to you because you are specialized in a particular area. I feel like it also minimized my competition once I figured out, off the basis of my own personal experience with health, my own challenges. I think that really allowed me to differentiate myself, and that really that demonstrates expertise and being an expert in a specific area. And I think once you kind of dive into that and you start playing around with what your unique expertise might be, things will kind of come to you in regards to that experience, that extra knowledge, and you'll just kind of like continue to feed it. And I think being recognized as an expert in a particular area is very, very helpful. And then also when you're talking about more the business side and the costs and things like that, it certainly reduces your marketing costs when you kind of like niche up to a targeted audience, rather than having to like really like go broad with your marketing, be that online or in person or whatever that might be. So there's certainly some really big benefits, I'd say, business wise, to niching up. It certainly can be very challenging when you first like graduate, or you're really early into your career. Like, I think most people come out of their training thinking they could be able to help everybody. I think from a business standpoint, that's very challenging. Not impossible, certainly not impossible, but it will be a challenge, considering, let's just take the west coast of Canada. There are so many amazing health practitioners out there, and it's not easy to make a business when it's just you. And it's a lot of time, like having clients, it's not just like sitting down one-on-one or doing it online. There's protocols, there's extra research you have to do, there's the business side of these things of actually getting these clients, and maybe starting a podcast or really getting a social media on point. It's super time consuming. So I think that the closer you can niche up, the better. But I think you've got to go with your personal experience. Like, what do you have a deep personal experience with that has really emotionally affected you and changed you? That's going to fuel you up. That's going to keep you going, because there's going to be rough patches. It's not going to be the steady incline of success. There's going to be dips and everything like that. So I think that when you associate your niche and your business and your kind of brand with something you've truly experienced and gone through, that's going to certainly provide a career, a future, and a business for you. And I think when you speak one-on-one with individuals and you're discussing their case, and I think it's important to pull from your own experience as well, whether that's clinical or personal. People recognize that authenticity. They recognize that you can connect with what they're going through. Can be really difficult. I interviewed a Swedish doctor who kind of like went from the conventional model and specialized into like mental health and like for business people. And she was talking about how they've got a decent healthcare system over in Sweden. I experienced it for a few years, and I've never actually spoken to a conventional doctor about it. But she was telling me that if you are, let's say, overweight and obese, or you're like pre-diabetic or you're diabetic in Sweden, you will get referred to a nutritionist, which is awesome, which is great, right? But 99% of these individuals are like super young, fit, 23-year-old women who probably most likely haven't gone through, like, they haven't gone through obesity. I can't say that they've not gone through mental health challenges, because we all do for sure, but they've not experienced what it is like to be overweight and obese, and the multiple struggles that come with something like that. So like this could be very difficult to create like an authentic client practitioner relationship there. So I think that niching up with your personal experience is very important, because you can be very authentic with your customer base.
I agree with that 100%. From my personal experience, and then also working with all the different nutritionists that I do, I find that strategy of drawing on your personal experience, you tend to attract those people to you anyways. So sort of just leaning into that makes your job easier in terms of marketing and in terms of research and things like that go on behind the scenes. Last thing before we get into all of the details about podcasting, a few of our members are interested in your connection to True Hope. Specifically, we had David on just a few weeks ago. Are you able to tell us a little bit about how you came to be connected with them and what your current role is there?
Oh, certainly. So True Hope, if you're not familiar, is just an unbelievable company with an incredible story that takes a bit of time to fully understand, I suppose. But yeah, they're awesome. So I started with them in 2018. I was brought in to work very part-time. I think I started on like 8 to 10 hours a week, and they brought me in to create digital content for them. They had a Facebook page, they had Instagram and a YouTube, but it was not run. It was not, it wasn't it wasn't dealt with on a weekly consistent basis. It was really poor, to be honest, when it started. Even the website was really outdated, and the majority of their marketing they did was, paper. It was literature. It was all in hand stuff. So they didn't have an online presence. So one of my teachers at PRC, her name's Maureen Fontaine. She does live blood analysis, but she also did a lot of medical research for True Hope. She basically put my name forward to Celeste over at True Hope and had a few interviews. And I started just 8-10 hours a week, and the role grew significantly as I kind of went through it. And at the time, for my nutrition page, so from my nutrition business, I had, I was on Instagram a lot. I had a YouTube channel, so I was learning and creating video content, editing, kind of all that background stuff. And they were really looking for, I think with True Hope, with that position, they wanted someone who could understand the really like the deep nutritional science behind our products, because Empower Plus, the flagship product of True Hope, is the most studied micronutrient product on the planet, and we have 35 publications. So they wanted someone to be able to like read that information, read those journals, and then turning that into like an Instagram post so that it was translatable. And I also just had the video marketing skills as well, that I'd completely like self-learn everything from like even the podcasting and the equipment and the editing. It's all completely self-learned from YouTube. YouTube is just like a phenomenal tool for learning kind of anything when it comes to the tech world. It really is a gift in regards to those types of things. So you can certainly self-learn all these things. But yeah, so now I'm the marketing director for True Hope, and it's my full-time job primarily. I do have a few clients here and there when I have the time, but it's not super easy. I do all content creation, the website design. I created the True Hope University for retailers to be able to educate further their staff, and just super. Yeah, and True Hope's just awesome. They give me this freedom to be creative in many different ways, and it's it's really a joy and a blessing. But yeah, it's 4 or 5 years I think I've been working for them now. And the podcast that we started the beginning of last year, that was just like, it was more just like a dabble in marketing, just to see kind of how it goes. Obviously podcasting is just like getting super trendy, and it was just a really exciting angle that True Hope kind of allowed me to check into. And we kicked off talking primarily about our products, talking to our customers directly, talking to our retailers, talking to the health practitioners, the doctors, the psychotherapists, the chiropractors, like all these people who use our products in their practice. We're able to like interview them, and it's a marketing arm, right? Being able to have these long form conversations of individuals, and it extended to talking to lawyers who have supported True Hope through their kind of Health Canada troubled days, speaking to other mental health practitioners who don't have any association with True Hope, I haven't even tried our products. So it's like sharing stories and creating commonalities between everything around psychological health. And the more we can kind of explore the different ways in which we can support people's mental health, the more people we can kind of like help and equipped with different ways of dealing with those big issues that we all have in our world.
Mm-hmm. So let's dig in. Let's talk more specifically about podcasting. For all of you who are watching live, you're welcome as we go through, especially this information about the podcasting. If you have questions, pop them into the chat or into the Q&A. I'll monitor there so we can pop in with those if there's anything specific that you folks want some clarity about. But I guess let's start with why do you believe podcasting is such a valuable tool for nutritionists in general who are looking to expand their opportunities?
I think it really gives the individual the opportunity to build deeper connections with an audience that they may not have ever thought existed. So people get to hear your voice and feel your authenticity in a long form conversation, which is kind of rare. Like you can make a 90-second reel, or you can write a really cool Instagram blog, but which is great. And I think those things certainly have their merit. But I'm a massive Joe Rogan fan in regards to the way he does his podcast. I don't listen to like when he interviews MMA fighters and stuff. I don't have any interest in that, but he has like neurobiologists on, he has scientists on, he has people like Robert Malone and F. Kennedy on. Like he just has like really open, crazy conversations and debates, and they're 3 hours long. And I never would have thought 5 years ago I would have committed 3 hours of my week to listening to one of these conversations. But what I find so fascinating about that whole process is that nobody can put on a character or lie for 3 hours. So you're kind of forced to be this open, authentic, unique individual in this time. And you can just like, I think most people can spot the BS in like a 2-minute interview on CNN or something. People can spot that. You can hold that character. You can talk, you can lie through your teeth for 2 minutes, but for 3 hours in this, like, especially when you're being questioned in a very unique conversational way, and it's kind of like a fly on a wall situation, I suppose, that for him, like millions and millions of people listen to. I think it really helps. He's obviously built this audience based on that authenticity within himself. I mean, he's obviously the biggest podcast in the world, but he started just doing it with a few people listening, just for fun as a creative outlet, and kind of look where it's got him. And I think all off the basis of being genuine and authentic and creating a space for questions and being open for a space of opinions and difference of opinions, being open to being wrong, being open to being right. And I think that genuine piece is probably the biggest part about what makes a podcast very, very interesting is, yeah, you're able to build that very authentic connection with your audience. It's also powerfully convenient if once you start getting in the flow of things, like it's going to get difficult to start with all the, maybe some of the techie stuff and getting it out there and finding the time in your busy life to be able to start facilitating this. But, I'm sure most people here listen to podcasts. It's so easy to just download them. If you're driving to Vancouver from Kamloops and you've got no service for an hour, you just download that and you're kind of good to go. It's like, turns one of my, like, I don't really like long drives, but it turns like long drives into quite enjoyable experiences. I've got 2 young kids. Finding 3.5 hours to listen to a podcast straight off the bat it's like Christmas. So it's really, yeah, once you kind of get into it, it can be really powerful for to reach a lot of people. And most people listen to podcasts these days. I think it's pretty simple to get started. So you can do it with an iPhone, really. At the end of the day, you just need to capture the audio, and then as you build your brand and you want to get more into it, you can start getting to some more advanced equipment, I suppose. But it doesn't have to be expensive at all. You just have to make a little bit of a plan and just hit the red button. And that's probably the more difficult thing for a lot of people, is just finally sitting down to actually sit and record. Probably holds a lot of people back, that actual just initial process. But it also creates a lot of like personal skills. As I said before, a lot of the video stuff and the YouTube stuff that I'd learned before, it was all self-taught. So you kind of get that technical skill in regards to video editing, audio editing, but also like it's incredible for conversational skills, I believe. And as a health practitioner, as a nutritionist, I certainly learnt to actively listen. And that's probably the biggest aspect of a podcast host, as I am for True Hope Cast, is being able to actively listen for 1 hour and really be there in the conversation. And most of our podcasts now are all done online, so it can be quite challenging to having to deal with everything that's kind of like going on. You've got your flow, you've got your questions, you're really trying to engage in this individual because you want the conversation to flow, you want it to be engaging for the audience. But you really learn those skills obviously once you get into it and you start practicing. And it's really amazing for your listening skills, which will certainly filter into your clinical practice. So yeah, there's some really amazing aspects of podcasting that I just want to make sure I've got everything there. Yeah, I mean, it's engaging, it's super fun, and a kind of exciting thing to do as well. I think that on a personal self-care level, like if you don't have anything in your life that's a creative outlet, whether that's I don't know, I consider like yoga or art or writing, journaling, things like this, very powerful to feed that energy back towards you. But podcasting can be incredibly creative when you do find that authentic passion that we kind of spoke about before in regards to your business niche. And then you can certainly, as it builds, you can create additional revenue streams coming in, sponsorships. There's lots and lots of opportunity there. And again, like YouTube is just this fabulous educational tool for like how you can start to do that. And podcasts are never solid from day one. If you have a name and you have a flow and you kick it off with day one, and you can totally change that. You allow your audience to really guide how it goes. And I think a lot of the good podcasts are very, very unique, considering that always, most of the time, 2 people having a conversation about a certain topic. So I think that there's significant value and benefits of getting into the podcasting stream. It's just kind of getting over those initial hurdles can be an initial challenge.
Yeah, so let's discuss some of those more granular details, I guess, the questions that some of our networking nutritionist members had maybe about the logistics, I guess, of podcasting.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit about having a topic and a flow. Is that where you recommend people start, just having a topic or a specific point of view or something to bring to the table?
Yeah, I think it comes down to like, what do you like learning about? What do you like talking about? What do you have to say on, excuse excuse me, what do you have to say on certain topics within your health? Obviously, you've got your own business and your own experience in regards to how you do work and what you are interested in, and that certainly will have some overlap with other podcasts and other nutritionists. But I think that most people's voices are very unique. The perspectives are unique. So I think having certainly a rough idea of what you're going to be talking about. I mean, True Hopes is about mental health, so that's super broad. We could talk about psilocybin in one episode, and then we could talk about ice baths in the other, all connected. So that's certainly like a broad topic of mental health, but then you can certainly niche up different episodes. So I think it's not quite like the niching of the business side that we're talking about. You can certainly be a bit broader, but it has to come from personal experience, because there'll be days where you do not want to spend your 3 hours doing your podcast. But it has to be of value. It has to be exciting, kind of entertaining for you to talk about these things. And again, like, you're sharing most likely a quite important message. And I think it's quite powerful once you find your flow and you find kind of what's working for you.
And then you also mentioned you can just get started with your iPhone. Is that what you recommend? Just start with what you have, or is there certain equipment that is useful right off the bat?
Great question. I think you should just get going. I think that the first podcast I started was with a nutritionist friend of mine, Brooklyn, and we would meet up once a week for 2 hours, and I just had my phone out and we would just record. And then I bought like a small mic for my phone, and then I just like bought some more equipment when we weren't going to do it we were going to each other's houses and stuff, and I didn't want to bring all this equipment. So you can certainly just like start from your phone, but like what I'm using right now, it's like a kind of podcasting start box. You get this microphone, you get the audio interface, which is kind of like just easily tucked in under my computer, and you get these headphones as well. And I think it was $399, $400, I think, from Long and McQuaid. I bought this. It's just the perfect setup, and I've got it just like plugged into my Mac here. And I'll use it for if I'm listening to music while I'm working, or if I'm got Zoom meetings, or if I'm doing a podcast. It's so many different ways that I use this. I use it every single day for a couple of hours at least. But yeah, that's $400. It's not really a whole lot of money if you just want to upgrade from that kind of next level. But I think it's very important not to get, because I did this. I was like, oh, I don't have the right equipment yet. I'm not ready. And I was certainly talking myself out of getting it all going and getting it started. So you certainly don't need to have thousands of dollars worth of equipment. At the end of the day, it's just capturing the audio. And if you want to do video as well and share the podcast by video on whatever social media stream that might be, you just need your webcam. Zoom is a really great outlet, and I can certainly talk about some other software pieces as well.
Yeah. So in the spirit of like just getting going, are there any pieces that you should have in place before putting out an episode? Like, do you need to have a brand? Should you have a welcome message? Do you need music or an introduction? Like, what are those specific pieces that you really should have before you hit go?
Yeah, good question. I think a flow to your show is important. I think you need to listen to podcasts, and you need to listen to the people that you like and kind of figure out what they do. I think there's a common theme with a lot of podcasters these days, that there's maybe a 30-second, 90-second hook at the beginning from the conversation, like that's really going to gets people going. Oh, that's a really interesting idea, or an interesting sentence. So I do that with True Hope. We have this like 90-second, 60-second kind of hook, goes into some introduction music, and then I go into an introduction to the episode, into the podcast. Sometimes you have to put disclaimers on. Like I did a show last week with a chap called Michael Unbroken, he's got a phenomenal story. You should definitely check that episode out, just to plug myself. But he had like the worst childhood you could ever imagine, and he's turned himself into a complete success story, trying to completely change the story with generational trauma. But I had to do a disclaimer at the beginning of that episode because he used a lot of profanity, which is totally fine. At the end of the day, it's just words. But our audience isn't used to that. So you can kind of put things like that in. But in regards to just like getting going, I think you should understand kind of like what easy flow you want to use. At the end of the day, you can just go straight into, hi, welcome to the podcast. We're going to be talking about da, 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 today. You don't have to have music. You can do that if you want to. I think it's kind of cool. I think you can, you put a little bit of your own uniqueness into the type of music that you might select. And there's some amazing royalty-free music out there that you can get from. So I think that's probably the most important thing. And then once you've got a few episodes kind of lined up, whether you're talking yourself, which is quite difficult to be honest, I recommend you should have guests and people, because I did one episode when I talked about my experience of Empower Plus. It's me for an hour. It was very exhausting. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. So I would personally recommend having a podcast where you have guests and you can reflect and you can agree, you can disagree, and it can get, you can get quite heated. I think that's important. You should definitely don't get people on all the time who just completely agree with you. I think that's an interesting piece. But yeah, like once you've got some episodes up, and they're ready to go, like ready to just like put out there to the airwaves, I think that's when you can make sure you've got your brand and logo, and you can, actually set the actual hosting of the podcast up, and you can edit it, etc. But like I'd say, record a few podcasts, get comfortable with it, make mistakes, and then just put it out there, because podcasts are not film productions. There are people will misspeak, people will swear, people will forget what they were even talking about. There'll be errors, and that's the genuine, authentic part of listening to podcasts, because they're full of mistakes, and that's okay.
So you say you recommend having guests. How do you go about finding your guests?
Yeah, so I did start off with like Instagram, and kind of like, and basically just scouring the internet for people who I thought were cool, and listening to podcasts, and going and connecting with the guests who I thought were interesting. And they would obviously had a niche in regards to what they were talking about in the episode that I listened to, but there was always, I'd listen to the episode and I'd always have a bunch of questions that weren't asked by the host, and always have a different kind of twist or take on their particular niche that they would have. So I think that's very important to do, is, which podcasts you like listening to, reach out. And I'll tell you what, you'd be blown away with how accessible some incredibly famous people are for podcasts. At the end of the day, like I remember what my brother used to say to me when I worked in sales for him, that the prime minister or the president's probably only 3 or 4 phone calls away. But people are super accessible when it comes to wanting to talk about their own podcasts or books that they've put out, or their own profession, especially when it comes to the health and wellness industry. I feel like a lot of people want to help each other out, and they want to, they, wherever they can, they'll do it. So you should certainly reach out. Don't limit yourself to who you might want to talk to, because you'd be blown away that you might be able to speak to one of your favorite authors, or one of your heroes, or something like that. But there's a company called Podmatch, which I found about 6 months ago. So this is a service you can either pay for a membership, or you can just have their basic free platform. And it's about tens of thousands of different people, members from all different backgrounds, not just health, but so many different industries that you will get connected with. You will create a profile, you'll get matched up with people. I think you get 6 matches every day. So you go in there, you check your matches, you look at their profile, and they have these amazing sections in regards to their bio, topic ideas, question ideas, everything you might need to have that initial conversation with someone, like, would they be a good fit for my podcast? Everything's on these profile pages. And what's really good about Podmatch, if you are a member, if you do podcasts with other members, you get commission on those conversations, on those podcasts, once they go live. And they have a really good like internal system for scheduling these podcasts and keeping you accountable for them. And it's just a really, really good platform. I'm sure there's other ones out there. I've just used Podmatch. I think there's something called Pod Lottery I've been looking at as well. But as podcasts get super, super popular, these types of businesses are popping up all over the place, because it can be difficult to find guests. I think once I exhausted so many customers of True Hope and so many retailers, and I didn't want to just talk about our company or our products every episode. It was getting boring. It would have got boring if I did that. So being able to branch out and find these people, and you can certainly look at people in your area. You can start connecting with other like naturopaths or acupuncturists or whatever, whoever that might be, can certainly look in your own in your own area, in your own region, and then branch out. Yeah, there's some really, really awesome websites out there that will help facilitate the connection of people who will match with you.
Yeah, that's a really cool resource. I've never heard of them, but I'm going to have to check that out. Um, so you said when you're recording episodes that you can use Zoom, or there's some other softwares that are available for capturing video if you wanted to have a video podcast. What are some of those other options?
Yeah, so I used Zoom for a long time. I did a lot of in-person podcasts when we first started, and then COVID, and then everything kind of went on Zoom. Um, but I really wanted to get HD video. You can't record HD in Zoom yet, I don't think, anyway. But I wanted the HD video, and I wanted some other features, being able to like brand it a little bit when we're actually doing the recording. So I tried so many different ones. There's Squadcast, there's Riverside, both not bad, but I had every other episode there was a lagging problem or a download problem. So you would pay maybe $30-40 a month for this service. You could share that link in your Calendarly, or you could just share it within Podmatch, or you could just share it directly by email with your guest coming on. And then after the show would be done, you could download my video separately. You could download the guests and then the audio all together. You had many different downloading options, but it downloads locally for them. It doesn't download on your computer like Zoom. You know, like when you end this call, it's going to download onto your computer. It would download with their servers, and that's where I found issues. There were a couple of guests where I had wired internet with them because they've had these issues before. So if you do use a company like that Squadcast, Riverside, I'm sure they do a really, really good job. But like I tried them for 3-4 months each. I was just having too many lagging issues and downloading issues because not every guest has wired Ethernet, you know. So it's not a very common thing to have that, and you would need that to kind of guarantee the good quality video and audio that you want. And there were just some episodes that I would download, and the last 20 seconds just didn't exist. Just bizarre. Um, but in fairness, it's a kind of, these companies are brand new. You know, they're adapting to the whole video podcasting scene, and you know they want to offer alternatives to Zoom. And I'm sure it's technically quite complicated to get good quality HD and video and audio from two people from across the country or across the world, where this conversation is like flowing and there's not like that gap in it. So I get it, but I now use StreamYard. StreamYard I've used for the last 3 or 4 podcasts. It looks it's just a lot better. There's so much more you can do with the branding, and it's cheaper than Squadcast and Riverside. A lot more you can do with the branding. If you want to speak to a tech person, you can just like do a live chat within minutes. It's really amazing. And they're open up to new ideas. It's a young new company, and that's who I use so far is StreamYard.
Fascinating. That's actually my husband, his main job. He has a YouTube channel, does digital marketing, and they have a podcast, and he uses StreamYard as well for all of their weekly live streams and things. So I'm glad that you also would
Yeah.
advocate for them. Um, so you mentioned some of the issues with, downloading files or things like that. Do you do much editing once you get the final stream? And if so, what software are you using to do that editing?
Yeah, so I do audio and video. So just with the audio piece first, I'll just download the MP3 file, and I'll usually just chuck that straight into GarageBand. You know, I have an iMac, and that's what I use. I'll just put the whole audio file in there. And unless there's like a dog barking for several minutes, or there's something significant that happens, and obviously I'll make a note of that when we're doing the podcast, there'll be no editing. I'll just put the whole conversation in, and that's obviously a very easy thing to do. I'll add my intro music and outro music. I do the introduction to the podcast separately. So when I sit there and get ready to record a podcast with somebody, I'm just going into, "Hi Meredith, how you doing? Welcome to the podcast. What's going well for you?" And then I'll do the actual like longer introduction at a separate time, because sometimes those introductions can be quite long. And it just from in my process, it's just a cleaner process for me, to be honest. So yeah, like that's kind of important with the Garage Band, and that's obviously a free. I'm pretty sure that's a free app for the iMac. There's plenty of other ones that you can certainly use, but when it comes to video, I use Final Cut Pro. and I will, again, just trying to throw, unless there's something significant that's happened, I'll just put the whole video in there. I will create some borders and I'll put like a logo in, and I'll put like our outro music with some kind of just simple social media graphics and have the name of the guest. But other than that, like, it's pretty simple. Obviously, once you get into the flow of these things, it's pretty straightforward and it doesn't have to be like super complicated. At the end of the day, you could just chuck the video and upload the video you download from like StreamYard. You could just upload that to Facebook if you really wanted to, because they have some branding options and some small editing choices that you could have in there already. So you can certainly do that. And then if you want to like create reels from your podcast, I really like Michaela Peterson's podcast. She's on point when it comes to her Instagram reels. I find them very captivating for listening to like the whole episode. But she will, yeah, she'll have like an IG reel with the subtitles on there as well, so you can really like understand and really clearly get that 60 seconds. And I use a program called Capwing for that. That's just a website. Again, I think it's like $20 a month, but you can do some really amazing editing in there and create the different sizes that you might want, whether that's for an Instagram story or a Facebook post or a reel or something like that. Yeah, there's some really cool software packages out there that make things unbelievably easy to edit. And yeah, then you can use for your thumbnails and things like that. And if you want to stick images at the beginning and the end of a reel to really capture like what the talk's about or where people can continue watching, Canva is just like epic. Canva's the best.
There's a couple of questions that came in. Someone wanting to clarify what StreamYard is, and then you just also mentioned the name, which I can't remember. It caps something
Yeah,
for the IG. Can you clarify what those two are?
certainly. So StreamYard is a software like Zoom, but you can record HD quality video, and you can create like a room for people to sit and wait in. You can have many people on the call. Kind of, it's very very similar to Zoom, but like it's just a little bit more. So it's just a little bit more kind of upgraded in regards to it's built for people who want to do video podcasts and who want to take that content and put it out into different streams. So yeah, StreamYard is that primary software that I would use to record video. And yeah, super easy to navigate. And they don't offer it on their website like a free trial, but I just texted them. I said, listen, I've been using Riverside, not super happy with it. Heard great things about StreamYard. Can you give me a free week? And they'll do it. Like, no problem. So that's a good tip there. I recommend doing that because you don't want to get locked into, $300 for the year, or whatever it is for the monthly payment. So I would certainly recommend doing that. And I'm sure the other ones will facilitate like a free trial as well. So definitely give it a try and see what you think. And you can put your logo up in the corner. You can do some really cool things. Capwing is another editing software for more kind of smaller social media thing. Well, I exclusively use it for creating reels because it's so easy. It's like, you it's kind of like Canva. You could just drag your content in there, it will upload it, and then you can edit it. It's got auto translation on the subtitles, not translation, auto subtitles that they'll create for you. You can edit that in many different ways. It can be highly creative, and I'm sure you can actually use that software for many other things, but I just kind of use exclusively for reels. So that's Capwing. Again, I'm sure you can get a free week dabbling with that, but yeah, it's a really really cool service.
Awesome. So once you have your topic and you've recorded a few episodes and you're ready to post them, what platforms do you actually recommend posting your podcast to?
So I use Spreaker. I've used them for the 3 years I've been podcasting. And you just open up an account there, and you would upload your episode into there. And then once you've obviously linked all your stuff in kind of like the back end, it just goes out everywhere. It goes to Spotify, Spoitunes. It goes to iTunes. It goes to Spotify. It goes to everywhere that you want it to go. I think they probably have about 15 different locations for where people listen to podcasts, but it's like 90% of people listen to on iTunes or Spotify. So Spreaker. is really good for that. And you would just have to create a title, stick a thumbnail in, however you might want that to look. You create your description, you can put some tags in there, you can schedule it. You get some pretty decent statistics on just their like broadcaster membership platform. I think it's just like their intermediate membership basis. And then you can get some really, really deep analytics if you want to pay a little bit more for it. But you don't really need to go too far into that, I don't think. And you can see kind of like where people are listening, how people are listening. And if you've got if you use like Wix or something like that, you can see how people are finding your podcast via your website as well. So we have on True Hopecast, we have our audio version of our podcast on the website, and then the video goes out onto Rumble and Vimeo and Facebook. So yeah, there's multiple streams that you can get it on. But yeah, I just really like Spreaker. I'm sure there's some really good alternatives out there. I've just never had a problem with them in 3 years, so that's kind of why I stick with it.
Sophia's asking if you know the spelling of Spreaker.
I do.
Okay.
Spreaker.
Okay.
Like speaker with a extra R, not an extra R, just an extra R.
All right, very good. So
just one quick on front. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions, they can certainly just email me or text me. I can give you those details later if they want some more specifics. That's no problem.
And we'll post the replay of this call as well in Networking Nutritionist. So you've also got the like DM feature. You can post questions in the comments because you're in that group too. So people can also find you there. So last little bit of detailed stuff, I guess, for podcasting. Is there a certain length of time that you think is best, and frequency for the releases of the episodes? Is there one strategy that's better than another?
I think 45 minutes an hour is reasonable. From my experience, I've had people where it's been 35 minutes, and we've just had the most amazing conversation within that period. And didn't want to spoil it by dragging things out. So it's different with guests, but I give people an hour. And I think that just in my own experience and listening to podcasts, apart from Joe Rogan's, I've got 45 minutes to an hour where I've got good attention. I've actually got that space in my day to listen to it continuously. So I think 45 minutes to 60 minutes is reasonable for most people who are going to come and talk to you. And I think you can have a really good conversation about whatever it might be within that period of time. You can certainly go over that. You can certainly be under that. I think the content's obviously the most important piece rather than the duration. I think once a week is manageable for you as an individual creating it, but also like you got to think about your audience as well, right? People's time is super precious. So if you're going to pump out 3-4 a week, like I don't think that's even possible when you've got a business and a family and a life. But I think that would just be too overwhelming for an audience to keep up with you. And I think once a week is reasonable. I think most people kind of hit that who aren't these super podcasters who they get paid a lot of money to do it, so they can continuously pump out that content. I don't actually think that serves them, to be honest, because the quality of some of the conversations really diminishes. But I suppose it's up to what you've got available to you, I think, and having that consistency is important for your audience, but also for keeping yourself accountable with it. Because it'll be like, say you put a podcast out on a Saturday morning and it's Friday and you've not even started yet, it could be very easy to put that off. So creating that whatever period of time it is a week to be able to put towards that is important. If you've got the opportunity to batch record as well, I think if you're going to start off, I think doing a couple of episodes on your own just to get that extra content out there and to get more comfortable with it and to kind of see what the flow's going and to help introduce yourself to the audience. I think that could be very, very helpful to mix that in with a couple of guests. You can very easily in, like a 4-hour period have 3-4 episodes kind of ready to rumble. So that's a good option as well.
So in that vein, if we've got a nutritionist, they want to post a 1 hour once a week podcast, how much time overall do you think they're going to need to chunk out in their week to get that posted?
It's a good question. From getting guests to booking them to prepping questions, you might have a little bit of conversation by email or through Podmatch beforehand with the guests, and then you record, you edit, you upload, you market it. Probably 2 to 4 hours an episode, I
Okay.
guess. Obviously, depending on the duration of what you're doing. I think one key thing I should probably mention in regards to the editing process, if you do want to create a hook for your podcast, which I think you certainly should, you might have to re-listen to your podcast again that you record, which is another 45 minutes or an hour into the process. I do my very best to stay engaged with the conversation, but when somebody says something awesome, I usually make a mark of the time so I don't have to listen to the whole thing again. That can be very, very time saving. But yeah, that's kind of that's a little tip
Mhm.
again, I think. But yeah, I'd say 2 to 4 hours, and once you get the flow going, you can certainly reduce that time. So yeah, it'll be longer to start with, I think, as you kind of get into it. But once you get into you're more frequent with the editing process, it's gonna be it'll be a lot simpler.
Okay. Last couple of questions before I let you go. I know we're going a little bit over time. Do you have any tips specifically for turning a podcast into an additional revenue stream? Like how does that fit in with a business?
Yeah, well, Podmatch, for example, as I said before, they pay commission on doing conversation with other members, and you will get matched up with people, and you can certainly look through the thousands of people that are on their website, and it will tell you whether they are on their like basic plan or they're on their like legacy plan, and you will get 2 times the commission based on how what kind of membership these individuals have. Certainly, that's probably the quickest and easiest way to start like making money from your podcast. Um, Sponsorships as you develop a podcast, but also I think probably as you're kind of kicking off, I think it's just got the ability to get you more clients. So I wouldn't necessarily think as the podcast as like making you money, but it would be indirectly funneling individuals who come and listen to your podcast, who are interested in things that you might want to say. And again, like providing kind of call to actions through your podcast and directing people to your website, directing people towards your social media and other things that you do. And I'm sure a lot of people create free ebooks and these other things, offering gifts and things like that. I think that's probably some of the best ways to create revenue with the podcast. But until you kind of develop and get sponsorship into those things, then it's come more from clients and platforms like Podmatch.
Gotcha. So last question I have that's really specific to podcasting. Um, why would a nutritionist want to start a podcast when there's already so many available in the health space? Like, how do you think they can make sure that they stand out?
I think it's really important to become part of the conversation when it comes to health, nutrition. And it's also like, I don't think most people who are doing health podcasts, I think some of them might be doing this, but it's a small percentage. But I don't think they're keeping up with the ever changing evolution and science of health and nutrition, and kind of like it's very trendy. Obviously, nutrition diets is a very trendy thing, which is okay because that's obviously what people are talking about and what people want to listen to. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's the most factual, up to date in regards to like the actual literature. So I think that if you are a practitioner that values the actual science and the actual data, I think you can really really benefit people in sharing that and having conversation about that and how that can actually expand what that means for people. And everybody, everyone listening to this, everyone's got a unique voice, a unique opinion, and a unique perspective. It's what makes us amazing individuals, and that's what makes things interesting. So I think it's important to start sharing that and to start conversations, especially conversations that are controversial and difficult to talk about, and that will break down beliefs and open up new perspectives and new ideas. I think that the more people can have that, the better. It's a super creative, fun thing to do, in my opinion. I am not an arty person, so I don't have a whole lot of like creativity in my life, to be honest. Apart from playing with my like 3-year-old, I suppose that's pretty creative and fun. But it's a super fun thing to be a part of, and you get to meet people from all over the world. And there are been some really cool things that have influenced me in my life, and podcast guests have been some of them, because they will share with you the most unbelievable journeys and stories. And it's so important to celebrate the success stories, especially when it comes to mental health, because you can get, a lot of people can get kind of pulled into or pulled down, I suppose, by the really depressing, sad stories. But being able to celebrate the people that really triumph through tragedy can be really, really really beneficial for you as a motivator. Um, but yeah, I think standing out, talking about your interests, things that you are really passionate about, giving people actions, giving your listeners actions and directing them to certain areas, asking questions, being open to getting opinions from your guests and allowing them to help guide the show. And podcasters really like helping other podcasters, so it's a really interesting community to be a part of. People will certainly want to help you and want to guide you in the right direction and have conversations with you. Yeah, like some of the best conversations that I've had have been with people who have other podcasts, and it's a really good community to be a part of.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Simon, for sharing so much detailed information. That was a lot we jammed into the last hour
Yeah.
there. Before I let you wrap up, I want to ask one more question. Do you have a favorite go-to question that you like to ask your guests?
Yeah, I suppose so. I like to ask people who's influenced them, and I ask about favorite books as well. I ask people what books they are, yeah, what books have motivated them, what books have kind of like changed their life, and especially, and also like people who have done that as well.
So what's your answer to that question then? What books have influenced you the most?
Oh wow, everything by Dr. Joe Dispenza. So Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, You Are the Placebo, and Becoming Supernatural are the books on just, they're just so good. Like, I started reading them in regards to learning how I can help my clients better, but it just completely transformed my own personal life. It had nothing to do with other people. It was all about me. It was just unbelievable. And it led me to do like a 2-day retreat in Vienna with him, and then a week long in Vancouver. And these were just like the most, I saw 3 miracles during that week. Those books are an absolute go-to. Recent ones, Dopamine Nation is epic.
I just read that myself.
Incredible, absolutely incredible book. I love the way that is written in regards from a clinical perspective. Fascinating. Yeah, so Veronica's nodding her head. She's all over Dopamine Nation. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Some cool kind of medical books. The Emperor of All Maladies. That's about the origins of cancer. I think that was a very fascinating book. Anatomy of an Epidemic. An Epidemic of Absence. That's a really cool book about over cleanliness and how parasites, viruses, and bugs so unbelievably important for us. Some wild stories of people curing lifelong illnesses by going to villages in Africa and not playing around, but like putting their feet in the feces of these individuals and getting certain parasites in their body, which completely balanced out their immune systems. Yeah, it's an epic book. What Really Makes You Ill is a really good book, incredibly well referenced. And I've just been learning about trauma a lot in the last few weeks. So, In an Unspoken Voice by Peter Levine. That's a really cool book as well.
Wow.
Yeah. I could go
Some
on
of
all
those,
day, but yeah.
yeah, some of those I haven't read. I'm gonna have to add them to my own reading list. They sound amazing. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you again, Simon, for coming on, sharing about your journey and sharing all of your expertise in the realm of podcasting. Thank you to everyone who attended live and posted up your questions. That was really helpful. We will have this for replay in Networking Nutritionist. I'll aim to get it up tomorrow. So if there's anything that you want to go back and re-listen to, you can do that as well. And of course, Simon, you're in the group in Networking Nutritionist as well. So if folks do have questions for you, you're welcome to connect with him there. And then if you wanted to connect outside of that, you're welcome to do that. So we mentioned at the beginning that Simon would be giving a giveaway. So he has graciously offered a one-on-one consult to one of you who has attended live here. So for those of you who have stuck through right to the end, we'll draw a name randomly. So when I post up this replay tomorrow, we'll include one of you as well as the winner for that one-on-one consult with Simon. So thank you for doing that as well.
Of course. No, this has been a lot of fun. And as I say, podcasters like to help podcasters. I think it's a really fun thing for people to be able to do. A lot more accessible than you might think. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. So I had a really, really good hour and a bit. This was really fun.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you again, everyone, for being here, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.